Pack it up, the woman snapped, her sunglasses catching the glare of the afternoon sun. This isn't the kind of neighborhood where you set up this kind of thing. Theo Carter froze behind his folding table, one hand on the sweating pitcher of lemonade. Excuse me? You heard me, she said, voice sharp and deliberate, every word meant to cut. We have standards. This isn't some street corner in the city. This is Maple Crest. And we don't allow, she paused, letting her gaze travel from his hair to his sneakers, unpermitted vendors. Theo's jaw tightened. It's lemonade. Her laugh was cold, practiced. Not my problem. You're running a business. And I don't care if you're 14 or 40, rules are rules. She tapped her phone like a trigger. Police are on their way. Theo felt heat rising in his chest, but he stood still. For lemonade? His voice cracked, not with fear, but disbelief. The woman tilted her head, lips curving into something between pity and contempt. No, not for lemonade. For you. 3 hours earlier, that stand was just a dream. Theo had dragged the folding table out from the garage, brushed off cobwebs, and set it up beneath the slice of shade stretching across the driveway. The table wasn't perfect. One leg was shorter, making the surface tilt just enough to rattle the cups. But to him, it was a launch pad. He'd been saving for weeks to buy lemons, sugar, cups, and poster board. Not because he wanted spending money, but because the Eastbrook robotics team had qualified for regionals, and he refused to be the kid who showed up without pulling his weight. His mother, Layla, had watched from the porch, arms folded, smile faint but proud. You sure you don't want me to add fundraiser to the sign? She asked. Theo shook his head, carefully tracing the last letter with a black marker. People don't need to know the whole story. Just that it's lemonade. He was wrong about that. By noon, he'd made more than $20. A nurse heading to her shift left him a $10 bill. Kids on scooters giggled and dropped quarters into his tip jar. Even a jogger stopped long enough to grab a cup, wiping sweat from his brow and saying, "Keep the change, kid." It was working. For once, Theo didn't feel like the world was stacked against him. He was just a kid selling lemonade in the heat of a summer afternoon. Until the rhythm broke. The sandals came first, smacking against the pavement like a warning. The woman moved with the confidence of someone used to taking up space. Crisp blouse, pearl earrings, manicured nails, clutching a designer phone. Her eyes scanned his stand not with curiosity, but with disgust. She didn't see the crooked smiley face on his poster board. She didn't see the ice floating in the pitcher. She didn't see his determination. She saw something else. How long have you been operating? She demanded. Theo blinked. Operating? Yes, she said, her tone dripping with superiority. Operating a food and beverage business. Without a permit. Did your parents put you up to this? Theo felt his stomach tighten. It's just lemonade, ma'am. On my driveway. She gave a short, humorless laugh. Your driveway? Sweetheart, driveways belong to the neighborhood. And the neighborhood has rules. Theo tried to breathe evenly. He'd heard his dad, a lawyer, explain how sometimes silence was more powerful than shouting. But right now, silence felt like drowning. I'm raising money for my robotics team, he said, voice steady even though his palms sweated. We're going to regionals. Her smile twisted. That's nice. But if you want to raise money, try babysitting or mowing lawns. We don't run flea markets on Maple Crest. The words hit harder than he expected. Flea market. The implication was clear. His table, his sign, he himself, all out of place here. Theo's throat ached, but he held his ground. I'm not moving. Her sunglasses slid lower on her nose. Then the police will move you. Theo's heart thudded. He thought about all the stories his dad had told him about how a single phone call could change the course of someone's life. His legs wanted to fold. His voice wanted to shout. Instead, he stood still, gripping the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles whitened. That's when the screen door creaked open. His mother, Layla, stepped onto the porch. Her eyes took in the scene, her son, standing firm, and the woman, phone pressed to her ear. She walked down the steps slowly, each footfall deliberate. Is there a problem here? She asked. The The woman turned, lips curling in satisfaction. Yes, there's a problem. Your son is running an illegal stand. I've already contacted the authorities. Layla's jaw clenched. He's selling lemonade. On our property. Perfectly legal. Not in this neighborhood, the woman sneered. We have standards. Standards? Layla echoed. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned. You mean the kind that change depending on who's standing behind the table? The woman didn't answer. She didn't need to. The sound of a siren broke the silence. A faint wail, growing louder as it turned onto their street. Curtains shifted in windows. Neighbors leaned forward on porches. Every ear tuned to Maple Crest Lane. Theo's chest tightened. He felt the sweat on his neck, the trembling in his hands. He thought about packing up the table, shoving the sign into the garage, pretending none of this had happened. But then he heard his mom's voice, firm and unwavering. Stay right here. So he did. The police cruiser rolled up, lights flashing lazily against the summer sun. A door opened, boots hitting the pavement. The officer's notebook was already in his hand. He looked at Theo. At the table. At the woman with her pearl earrings and smug expression. What seems to be the issue here? He asked. The woman stepped forward eagerly, pointing at Theo like he was contraband. That boy, she declared, is running an illegal business. He doesn't belong here. The officer turned to Theo. His expression unreadable. Pen poised. And in that heavy silence, standing in front of his lemonade stand, Theo Carter learned how quickly innocence could look like guilt, and how a single sentence from a stranger could decide which it would be. The officer's eyes flicked between Theo, the sweating pitcher, and the woman still pointing like she was identifying a criminal. His pen hovered above the notebook, waiting for words that would decide the weight of the moment. Son, he said finally, his voice calm but edged with authority. How old are you? Theo swallowed, his throat dry. 14. 14. The officer repeated it like it was a fact he had to test for cracks. And this is your stand? Yes, sir, Theo said. He forced his voice to stay steady, even though his chest rattled with nerves. I'm selling lemonade. On my driveway. The woman scoffed. Don't let him play innocent. He's running a business without a permit. That's against code. This neighborhood has standards. Ma'am, the officer cut her off gently but firmly. I'll hear from you in a moment. She bristled, clearly unused to being put on pause. The officer turned to Layla. You're his mother? Yes, she said, her tone clipped but measured. My son is selling lemonade to raise money for his robotics team. He is not breaking any laws. That's not true, the woman snapped. I'm on the HOA compliance committee. This, she jabbed her finger toward the table, is unapproved signage, unpermitted retail activity, and a safety hazard. I called because someone has to care about the rules. The officer's gaze shifted back to Theo. He scanned the stand again, the sign with crooked letters, the cups stacked neatly, the chalk line Theo had drawn to keep the table off the sidewalk. It looked less like a business than a summer ritual. What are you raising money for? The officer asked. Theo felt his voice wobble but pushed through. Our robotics team. We qualified for regionals. I'm trying to help pay for it. Something softened in the officer's face. But before he could speak, the woman pressed on. Don't fall for that, she said sharply. This isn't about robots. This is about neighborhood standards. If you let him do this today, then tomorrow it's yard sales, next week it's food trucks, and before you know it, Maple Crest looks like a flea market. Theo's lips parted. It's just lemonade. Her laugh was short, bitter. No, it's not just lemonade. It's about who belongs here. Those last 4 words cut sharper than the heat. Neighbors shifted on their porches. Some looked away. Others leaned closer, phones in hand, thumbs already hovering near record buttons. Layla's voice snapped through the silence. Say it plain. You don't think my son belongs here. The woman smirked, sliding her sunglasses higher. I didn't say that. You didn't have to, Layla shot back. The officer cleared his throat, redirecting the tension before it split wide open. All right, he said. Here's the situation. The city passed an ordinance 2 years ago. Kids can run lemonade stands on private property without a permit, as long as they aren't cooking food. That's the law. Theo felt a surge of relief, but it evaporated instantly when the woman's face darkened. That doesn't matter, she snapped. The HOA rules override city ordinances. And the HOA says no signage, no retail, period. If you don't enforce it, you're just enabling chaos. The officer's jaw tightened. The HOA is a civil matter, not a police matter. My job is to enforce the law. For the first time, the woman faltered. Her cheeks flushed red beneath the tan. She sputtered, "So you're just going to let this stand stay up? You're siding with them?" "I'm siding with the law," the officer replied evenly. The driveway crackled with the kind of silence that comes when someone doesn't get what they expect. Neighbors leaned forward, phones held higher now, the quiet chorus of digital clicks filling the air. Theo felt his stomach twist, not because of the officer's words, but because he realized this moment wasn't staying on Maple Crest Lane. It was being captured, packaged, and sent beyond the hedges. "Unbelievable," the woman muttered. She turned on her heel, as if retreating would erase what had happened. But halfway down the sidewalk, she spun back, her voice loud enough for the street to hear. "This isn't over. You think you can get away with this because of your skin color? Because the world's afraid to say no to you?" Her sunglasses slipped, and for a brief second, her eyes showed exactly what she meant. Layla stepped forward, fury flashing across her face. "Afraid? The only thing this world has ever been afraid of is letting boys like my son just be boys. Selling lemonade shouldn't need defending." Theo's hands shook on the table. He wanted to disappear. He wanted to scream. Instead, he did the only thing he could. He gripped the pitcher and poured himself a glass. He raised it slowly, deliberately, and took a sip. The lemonade was warm now, too sweet, but it gave him a way to breathe. The officer watched, his expression unreadable. He closed his notebook. "Ma'am," he called to the woman, who was still standing rigid on the sidewalk. "I strongly suggest you take this up with your HOA. But there's nothing illegal here. My time is done." She sputtered again, but the authority in his voice cut off her protest. She stalked away, muttering under her breath about lawsuits and people like them. The cruiser doors shut with a thud that sounded final. The blue lights clicked off. The officer gave Theo a nod, a brief flicker of respect in his eyes, then drove away. Silence stretched across Maple Crest. It wasn't comfortable silence. It was the kind that pressed down, heavy with the knowledge that everyone had seen something ugly and most had done nothing. Theo lowered his glass, set it on the table, and stared at the wet ring it left. His chest felt hollow. He whispered, almost to himself, "Did we do something wrong?" "No," Layla said firmly, her arm wrapping around his shoulders. "Not a thing." But the look in her eyes told him something deeper, that even when you did everything right, someone could still decide you were wrong. Across the street, a neighbor's porch light blinked. Olivia Ramos, who'd been filming the entire confrontation, lowered her phone and mouthed across the street, "I got it." Theo's stomach tightened. A part of him wanted her to delete it, to bury the whole thing before it grew bigger. Another part wanted the world to see what he had just felt. The humiliation, the heat, the way innocence could turn into evidence in the space of a single phone call. By evening, he wouldn't have to choose. Because by evening, Theo's lemonade stand would no longer just be a driveway memory. It would be a headline, a video, a debate, and his name, his face, would be the proof that sometimes even the smallest stands carry the heaviest weight. The first time Theo saw himself on a stranger's screen, it didn't feel real. The video was grainy, angled from across the street, his voice softer than he remembered, his shoulders straighter than he thought they'd been. But there he was, standing behind a table with a crooked sign and a sweating pitcher, holding a plastic cup as if it were armor. And there she was too, the woman with her sunglasses and her sharp words, declaring he didn't belong. By Sunday morning, the clip was everywhere. It started in the neighborhood, the kind of group chat where people usually argued about trash collection and lawn lengths. Someone dropped the video with a caption that read, "This makes me sick." Within an hour, it was on Facebook with the headline, A woman calls cops on black teen's lemonade stand. By noon, it had hit Twitter, recaptioned with fire emojis and hashtags. And by evening, Theo's name, spelled right in some posts, butchered in others, was trending in the city. He hadn't even left the house that day. At breakfast, Layla tried to shield him from it, turning her phone face down on the counter. "Eat your eggs," she said gently, sliding the plate closer. "I'm not hungry," Theo muttered, pushing the fork through the yolk until it broke into a golden smear. Across the table, his father was already dressed in a pressed shirt, tie knotted tighter than usual. Darius scrolled through his phone, jaw clenched, eyes dark. "It's spreading faster than I thought," he said quietly. "Some of the captions are brutal." Theo looked up. "Like what?" Layla shot him a warning glance, but Darius didn't sugarcoat. "Some people are calling her a racist Karen. Others are calling you a troublemaker. There's already a thread arguing whether you provoked her." He set the phone down and rubbed his temples. "And the comments, we won't read those out loud." Theo's chest tightened. He didn't want to be a symbol. He didn't want to be a hashtag. He wanted to go back to pouring cups for joggers and kids on scooters. But once the world had taken your story, you didn't get to decide what it meant anymore. By noon, reporters were at their door. Local first, the kind of journalists with polite smiles and notepads, the ones who knocked instead of barged. Later came the bigger outlets, cameras perched on shoulders, voices eager for quotes that would fit neatly into 30-second news clips. Theo sat on the couch, knees drawn up, while his parents stood at the doorway turning them away. "We're not giving statements," Darius repeated, his lawyer's cadence sharp but controlled. "This is about a boy selling lemonade, not about building careers off outrage." But even without their words, the video spoke louder than anything they could say. It showed Theo's stillness while the woman sneered. It showed Layla stepping beside her son, her voice steady and strong. It showed the officer explaining the ordinance and refusing to shut him down. And it showed the moment the woman spat, "You don't belong here," before storming off. Those 5 words were enough to split the internet in half. Supporters called Theo brave, flooding the hashtags with messages of encouragement. "Keep standing tall, young king. This is why we need change." Some even donated to the robotics team's fundraiser page, pushing it past its goal in a single afternoon. But there were critics too. Strangers hiding behind blank profile pictures accused him of exaggerating. Some said he was being used by his parents to push an agenda. Others twisted the clip into something it wasn't, arguing about rules, permits, and neighborhood rights. Theo tried not to look, but curiosity is a hard thing to starve. He sat in his room, scrolling until the words blurred together, each one cutting a little deeper. He whispered into the quiet, "I didn't do anything wrong." From the doorway, Layla's voice came softly. "No, you didn't." She stepped inside, sat on the edge of his bed, and brushed his curls back from his forehead. But sometimes the world doesn't care about right and wrong. Sometimes it cares about the story it wants to tell. Theo pressed his hands over his face. "I don't want to be a story." Her hand rested on his back. Neither did Rosa Parks when she sat on a bus. Neither did Emmett Till when he bought candy. But history doesn't ask permission. It shows up on your doorstep, and suddenly your choices are a mirror for everyone else. Theo peeked through his fingers, eyes stinging. "But I'm not Rosa Parks. I'm not anybody." "You're my son," she said fiercely. "And that's enough." That night, the robotics team coach called, his voice thick with pride. "You've inspired more kids than you know," he told Theo. "Half the team watched that video together. They saw you standing there." "That matters." Theo mumbled thanks, but when he hung up, he whispered, "It doesn't feel like it." The truth was he felt smaller than ever. Every ding of his phone made his stomach flip. Every shadow outside felt like someone watching. Even at school on Monday, eyes followed him down the hallway. Some were filled with admiration, others with curiosity, a few with resentment, like he had stolen attention they thought should belong somewhere else. At lunch, his best friend Malik sat across from him, chewing slowly on a sandwich. "You okay?" Theo shrugged. "Do I look okay?" Malik hesitated, then grinned. "You look famous." Theo groaned, dropping his head onto the table. Kill me now. But Malik's grin faded. No, seriously. They were talking about you in homeroom. Half the kids were saying you're a hero. The other half were saying you'll probably get your family sued. Theo lifted his head, eyes narrowing. Sued? Yeah, Malik said. People think that lady's gonna come after you. My mom said she saw her at the grocery store, loud as anything, telling people she was the victim. Theo's stomach churned. Victim? Malik nodded grimly. That's what she's saying. That you harassed her. That she felt threatened. That evening, Darius sat the family down at the dining table, a stack of papers spread before him. His tie was loosened, sleeves rolled up, but his eyes were sharp with purpose. She's trying to spin it, he said. Claiming harassment, claiming fear, trying to weaponize the HOA bylaws against us. He tapped the papers. I've drafted a complaint. We're filing with the city. And if she keeps pushing, we'll take it further. Theo stared at his father. Court. Maybe, Darius said. We're not asking for damages. We're asking for clarity. The law is clear. You had every right to sell lemonade on your driveway. And we won't let her rewrite that just because she doesn't like what you look like. Theo's chest ached. But what if they believe her? They won't, Darius said firmly. And if they try, we'll fight. He reached across the table, gripping Theo's hand. I've been fighting this kind of thing my whole career. But this time, it's my son. That makes it different. Layla's hand covered them both. And it makes it personal. Theo wanted to believe them. He wanted to feel the strength in their voices settle into his bones. But all he could think about was that moment on the driveway, the woman's voice cutting through the air, telling him he didn't belong. The world had seen it. The world had shared it. The world had made him a symbol. But late that night, staring at the glow of his phone, Theo realized something chilling. The world hadn't really seen him. They had seen a clip. A headline. A boy holding a cup. And that's when it hit him. The video wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. On Monday morning, the courthouse smelled like printer ink and coffee that had been reheated one too many times. The air was cool, the kind of manufactured chill that wrapped itself around people as if to say, this is where order lives. Darius Carter stood at the counter with his sleeves rolled, his tie already loosened as though he had fought with it in the car. He slid a neatly typed petition across the polished wood, the top stamped with a title that looked too small for the storm it described. Carter versus City of Eastbrook. He was not asking for money. He was not suing for damages. He was asking for something simpler, but heavier, a declaratory judgment. He wanted the court to say, out loud, in permanent ink, that his son had every right to sell lemonade on his driveway without being treated like a criminal. The clerk, a woman with sunflower earrings and tired eyes, looked over the papers and gave a small nod. Filing fee, she asked. Paid, Darius replied, sliding the receipt. His voice was calm, but his fingers betrayed a small tremor. Not fear, anticipation. By noon, the judge assigned to the case was announced. Honorable Raquel Sandoval. A woman with a reputation for being sharp, deliberate, and unwilling to let politics stain the law. Lawyers whispered that her words carried weight long after cases closed, because she didn't just issue rulings, she issued reminders of what justice was supposed to feel like. At home, Theo sat at the kitchen table, staring at the printed copy of the petition. The words blurred, dense paragraphs of legalese that felt like another language. He pushed the paper back. Why does it have to be me? His father sat down across from him, the edge of exhaustion lining his face. Because it was you, he said quietly. Because when that woman pointed at you, she wasn't just pointing at a boy with lemonade. She was pointing at every kid who looks like you, every family that someone thinks doesn't belong. If we don't push back here, they'll think they can do it again. Theo slumped in his chair. But I didn't ask for this. I know, Darius said. His voice cracked a little, then steadied. But sometimes history doesn't ask permission. Sometimes it shows up on your driveway. Layla, who had been standing at the stove, turned with a wooden spoon still in her hand. And when it does, you decide whether to let it knock you over or stand tall enough for people to see. She set the spoon down, her eyes fierce. "You stood tall that day, Theo. Now we finish what you started." Theo swallowed hard. He wanted to argue, but he could feel the truth of her words pressing down on him like the sun had on Saturday. By Tuesday, the story had already spread beyond their city. Cable networks replayed the video with commentators dissecting every word. Clips of the woman saying, "You don't belong here," circulated with hashtags that divided households. Some praised Theo's calm as heroic. Others claimed the family was stirring unnecessary outrage. And then the announcement came. The city council had added an agenda item to address the ordinance at their next public meeting. The meeting hall was packed. Rows of folding chairs filled with neighbors, reporters, and people who had never set foot in Maple Crest but felt they had a stake in what it represented. Signs bobbed above the crowd. "Let kids be kids. Rules are rules. Justice for the Carters." Theo sat between his parents, his palms sweaty against his knees. He had never seen so many people staring at him, whispering, pointing. It felt like standing on stage without a script. When the council president called the session to order, the room buzzed with tension. Speakers lined up, each with 2 minutes to make their case. A retired teacher stepped forward first. "Children have been selling lemonade in this country for generations," she said, her voice trembling. "If we start calling police on them, what does that say about us?" The next speaker, a man in a pressed polo shirt, argued the opposite. "Rules exist for a reason. If you give an inch, people will take a mile. Today it's lemonade. Tomorrow it's pop-up shops clogging our streets." Applause, boos, mutters. The president banged her gavel. Then Olivia Ramos, the neighbor who had filmed the video, stepped forward. Her voice shook at first, but her conviction grew with every sentence. "I saw what happened," she said. "I saw a boy treated like a suspect for doing something innocent. I recorded because I knew nobody would believe it if they didn't see it themselves. And I don't regret it. If this city can't protect its children from harassment, then the law means nothing." The room erupted in cheers. Theo's chest tightened. His throat burned. He wanted to thank her, but his voice stayed stuck in his chest. Finally, the council allowed the Carters to speak. Darius stood first, his posture that of a man used to commanding rooms. "This is not just about lemonade," he began, his voice deep, steady, carrying. "This is about what happens when people weaponize rules to police who belongs. My son is 14. He should not know what it feels like to stand accused for existing. And yet here we are. The law is clear. The ordinance is clear. The only thing unclear is why this city allows a phone call to turn a child into a suspect." The room was silent. Then the council president leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, are you seeking punitive action?" Darius shook his head. "No. We're seeking clarity. We're asking for a declaratory judgment, so no other child in this city will have to wonder if selling lemonade is a crime." All eyes turned to Theo. The council president softened her tone. "Young man, do you want to say anything?" Theo's legs trembled as he stood. His voice wavered at first, but he forced himself to look out at the sea of faces. "I just wanted to raise money for my robotics team," he said. "I wanted to be part of something. But instead, I was told I didn't belong." Later that night, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The text read, "Saw you at the council. Brave kid. But be careful. Some people won't let this go." Theo stared at it until the words blurred. He locked the phone and set it face down, but the warning stayed with him, echoing louder than any cheer. And as he drifted into uneasy sleep, one thought haunted him. Winning on paper didn't mean winning in real life. Because prejudice doesn't vanish with a vote. It waits. It lingers. And sometimes it fights back. The courthouse steps felt heavier than stone. Theo stared at them, his sneakers scuffing against the first riser, his chest tightening with every heartbeat. To everyone else, it was just another Friday morning in Eastbrook. To him, it felt like the ground beneath those steps might decide whether the world would keep seeing him as a boy selling lemonade or as a problem too big to ignore. His parents flanked him on either side. Layla's hand rested firmly on his shoulder, a quiet anchor. Darius carried his leather briefcase like it was a weapon sharpened for battle. They didn't speak as they climbed. Some silences are louder than any words. Inside, the air was cooler, crisp with the scent of paper and old wood. The courtroom itself was plain but intimidating, rows of benches, a polished floor, and a seal looming over the judge's bench like an unblinking eye. Reporters filled the back rows, pens poised, cameras forbidden but memory sharp. Neighbors had come too, some supportive, others curious, a few clearly hoping the Carters would lose. Theo sat between his parents at the front. His palms were damp, his tie felt too tight, and the clocks ticking above the clerk's desk hammered louder than his own thoughts. When the bailiff called, "All rise," the room moved as one. Judge Raquel Sandoval entered with steady steps, her black robe swaying. She looked neither stern nor soft. She looked like someone who had seen too many days like this and still carried them all. "Be seated," she said, her voice clear, strong, not unkind. The clerk called the case, Carter versus City of Eastbrook. Petition for declaratory relief. Theo's stomach knotted hearing his family's name echo against the walls. It didn't sound like them anymore. It sounded like history. Darius stood first. He buttoned his jacket, set his papers down, and looked up at Judge Sandoval with the calm intensity of a man who had spent years choosing words like scalpels. "Your Honor," he began, "this is not a case about money. It is not even, strictly speaking, a case about lemonade. This is a case about what happens when laws meant to protect children are ignored in favor of bias dressed up as rules. My son, 14 years old, was selling lemonade on his own driveway. Perfectly legal under Ordinance 18 to 141. Yet one phone call was enough to summon the state, to turn his afternoon into a spectacle, to tell him he didn't belong." He paused, letting the words hang heavy. "We are here to ask this court to say what should already be obvious, that the law means what it says. That children have the right to be children without fear of harassment disguised as compliance." Judge Sandoval leaned back slightly, her fingers steepled. She gave no sign of agreement or disagreement, only the weight of attention. The city attorney rose next. A woman named Priya Patel, her blazer sharp, her folder neatly tabbed. She didn't argue against Theo's right. She didn't even defend the woman who had called. Instead, she spoke with careful diplomacy. "The city does not dispute the ordinance," she said. "We acknowledge that Mr. Carter was within his rights." The officers responded professionally and confirmed as much. "Our position is simply that the ordinance requires clarification, so that future incidents of this nature do not result in unnecessary police response." It was the safest argument possible, admitting fault without admitting guilt. But Darius wasn't interested in safety. He stood again, his voice firmer now. "With respect, counsel, this isn't just about future incidents. This is about what already happened. A law on paper means nothing if a phone call can override it. And when that phone call happens because of the color of a child's skin, it is more than a nuisance, it is harm. The court must say so." The judge tilted her head. "Mr. Carter, are you alleging discrimination?" Darius met her gaze squarely. "I am alleging that the law was ignored because someone chose to weaponize their discomfort with my son's presence. Whether we call that discrimination or not, the effect was the same. A boy doing something innocent was made to feel like a criminal." The judge considered this, then shifted her eyes toward Theo. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice softening, "would you be willing to address the court?" Theo's breath caught. He hadn't expected this. His heart pounded, his palms slick, but he felt his mother's hand squeeze his arm, steady and sure. He stood slowly, legs trembling, and faced the bench. His voice cracked at first, but he forced himself to continue. "I didn't think selling lemonade could be dangerous. I just wanted to raise money for my robotics team. I wanted people to like what I made. But instead, I was told I didn't belong. And that hurt. Because it wasn't about the lemonade. It was about me." The courtroom was silent. Every shuffle, every cough stilled. "I know rules matter," Theo went on, his voice growing steadier. "But rules should keep people safe, not give them excuses to push kids out of their own neighborhoods. When she called the police, she didn't see me as a kid. She saw me as a problem. And I don't ever want another kid to feel like that." He sat back down, his chest heaving, tears prickling the corners of his eyes. Layla squeezed his hand until he felt steady again. The judge nodded once. "Thank you, Mr. Carter." She turned back to the attorneys. "I've heard enough." The room held its breath. Judge Sandoval spoke deliberately, each word carved clean. "The ordinance is clear. Children may sell lemonade and similar beverages on private property without a permit during daylight hours. This court reaffirms that right and enjoins the city from responding to calls of this nature as enforcement absent a legitimate safety concern." She paused, then leaned slightly forward. Her eyes scanned the room, catching the faces of neighbors, reporters, supporters, and critics alike. "But let me add this," she said, her tone sharper now. "The court finds that using public resources to target a child's presence is not civic duty. It is harassment. It is the weaponization." Layla added, "We will not let fear decide where our children belong." Theo said nothing. He kept his eyes on the concrete, his jaw tight. When a reporter shoved a microphone toward him and asked, "How does it feel to win?" he finally lifted his head. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like surviving." The crowd hushed. The words were heavier than applause. That night, back at home, the family ate in silence. The pasta on the table went mostly untouched. Theo sat staring at the folded copy of the court's order, the judge's words highlighted by his father. He should have felt triumphant. But all he could think about was the moment the woman had pointed at him, her voice sharp with certainty. "You don't belong here." The judge had ruled. The law was clear. The city had spoken. But Theo knew in his bones that no gavel, no ruling, no headline could erase those words. And that realization stung more than anything. For 2 days after the ruling, the Carter household was unusually quiet. The world outside buzzed. Headlines repeated the judge's line about childhood, clips of Theo's trembling testimony spread across social media, and national outlets debated what the case revealed about race and power in suburban America. But inside the Carters' modest brick home, the family kept the blinds half-drawn and the television on low volume. The victory had left them drained rather than elated. Theo stayed mostly in his room, alternating between scrolling through his phone and staring at the ceiling. His robotics trophies, neatly lined along the bookshelf, suddenly felt like decorations from another life. His face had been shared, liked, commented on thousands of times. Strangers called him brave, others called him spoiled, and a few called him worse. He could not stop reading the comments, even though every word pressed deeper into his chest. At dinner on the third night, the silence broke. "They put our address online," Darius said quietly, setting his phone down on the table. His jaw was tight. "One of the local forums. People are arguing about whether we should move to a neighborhood that fits us better." Layla inhaled sharply. "Fits us better? What does that even mean?" Her voice shook, though she tried to steady it. "It means," Darius said, "that they think this isn't our home. That winning in court didn't win us a place in their eyes." Theo pushed his plate away, his appetite gone. "I told you this wasn't winning," he muttered. The next morning, when Layla walked outside to collect the paper, she noticed a flyer stuffed into their mailbox. It wasn't an official HOA notice, just a cheaply printed sheet with block letters, "Keep our community safe. No unauthorized vendors." At the bottom, someone had scribbled in pen, "We see you." She folded it with trembling fingers and slipped it into her cardigan pocket before Theo could notice. But the damage was already done. A neighbor across the street was watching from her porch, her gaze cold, unblinking. That weekend, the HOA called an emergency meeting. Though the Carters were technically members, they received no invitation. Darius learned about it from a sympathetic neighbor who slipped him a text message. Inside the elementary school gymnasium, folding chairs were arranged in neat rows. The HOA president, a tall man with a polished smile, stood at the front clutching a microphone. The meeting was less about rules and more about resentment. "This is not about race," he insisted, his voice carrying through the echoing space. "This is about order. The Carters have brought national attention onto Eastbrook. That is not what any of us signed up for when we chose this neighborhood." Applause followed, though not unanimous. A few residents shifted uneasily. Another man stood and added, What happens next time? Do we want camera crews parked on our street every time there's a disagreement? Do we want to be painted as racists on national television because one kid didn't follow the same rules as everyone else? Someone else muttered loudly enough for the back row to hear. That's what happens when outsiders come in and think they own the place. Not once was Theo's name spoken, but every word landed like a stone against his window. Meanwhile, online, the story only grew. National commentators framed it as a test of America's promise, late-night hosts cracked jokes about permit Karens, and activists pointed to it as one more reason why bias needed to be rooted out of suburban policing. Theo, however, felt smaller with every headline. At school, whispers followed him through the hallways. Some kids clapped him on the back, calling him a hero. Others smirked, calling him Lemonade Boy with mock sweetness. Teachers tiptoed around him, offering extensions on assignments he hadn't asked for, as though public attention excused his need for normalcy. One afternoon, he overheard two parents in the pickup line arguing. One said, "Good for him," standing up. The other replied, "Good for him? My kids can't even ride their bikes down the street." The gavel had fallen weeks ago, but the echoes of the courtroom still clung to Theo's mind like a shadow. On paper, the Carters had won. The charges against Theo were dismissed, the HOA chastised for its overreach, and Karen, whose real name was filed in court but forever replaced in headlines by that notorious nickname, was fined and ordered to complete community service. The world called it justice. Social media called it a victory for common sense. But Theo, sitting on the edge of his bed one gray Saturday morning, couldn't quite find the word for what it felt like. He looked at the folded lemonade stand in the garage, untouched since that hot afternoon when his childhood was stripped away in front of flashing police lights. He thought of all the people online calling him a symbol, a movement, hero. None of them had to walk past his classmates whispering, or hear neighbors muttering outside their driveway, or see the look in his mother's eyes when she thought he wasn't watching, half pride, half worry, and all exhaustion. It had been a victory, yes, but a victory that felt heavy, one that made him grow up faster than he ever wanted. That afternoon, the Carters went to a block-wide, unity picnic hastily organized by the city council. Colorful banners hung across the park, children played tag on the grass, and volunteers set up tables with grilled food. Local officials spoke of healing and moving forward, their voices polished and hopeful. But under the summer sun, the tension lay thick, like heat rising from the asphalt. Theo stood off to the side, sipping a soda, when a woman approached. She was older, her hair silver, her face worn but kind. She carried no camera, no clipboard, just a paper plate balanced in her hands. "You remind me of my grandson," she said gently. "Same age, same stubborn look when he knows he's right. I just want you to know, not everyone here is against you." Theo managed a small smile, grateful but uncertain how to answer. But just as quickly, another voice cut through. Kids shouldn't have been selling without a permit in the first place. A man in a baseball cap, holding a burger in one hand, was speaking loudly enough for others to hear. Rules are rules. All this drama could have been avoided if his parents taught him respect. The air went still around them. Conversations faltered. The man's words hung, daring anyone to challenge him. Theo froze. His throat burned, but no words came. Before he could speak, his father stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "My son is 14, Darius said. He was selling lemonade, not breaking into houses. The fact that this became a case at all tells you something about whose childhoods get protected and whose get policed." The man sneered but said nothing else. He turned away, muttering under his breath. Theo's hands trembled around his soda can. He wished he could shrink into the grass, disappear from the stairs. But when he looked up, he noticed something unexpected. A group of teenagers across the lawn, holding hand-painted signs. "Kids deserve childhood. Let Theo be a kid. Lemonade, not litigation." They weren't all black. Some were white, some Latino, some Asian, a patchwork of faces that didn't care about HOA bylaws. They marched across the grass, chanting softly, until they reached Theo and stood with him. Their presence was quiet but powerful, a reminder that he wasn't carrying the burden alone. For a brief moment, Theo felt something stir in his chest. Not relief, not triumph, but recognition. The world had seen him, and some had chosen to stand beside him, not above him. Yet the picnic ended with no grand reconciliation. Some neighbors left without making eye contact. Others lingered only long enough to shake hands for the cameras. The divisions hadn't vanished. They had simply been repainted with polite words and forced smiles. Later that night, Theo sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone. The headlines were already fading into the background of the 24-hour news cycle. New scandals, new stories, new tragedies. His own face, once splashed across every screen, was now buried 3 pages down. "Guess the world moved on," he muttered. His mother set down a plate of cookies and sat across from him. "That's what the world does. It moves on. But we don't forget. And neither should you." Theo frowned. "But what's the point if nothing really changes?" She reached across the table, taking his hand. "Change doesn't happen in one big moment, Theo. It happens in 1,000 small ones. Sometimes you'll see it. Sometimes you won't. But every time someone stands up, every time someone refuses to be silenced, it leaves a mark. You left a mark." Her words settled in his chest, heavy but warm. He wanted to believe them. The following week, Theo returned to school. The whispers hadn't disappeared, but they were softer now, less sharp. A few kids approached him, asking if he'd thought about turning his story into a fundraiser, maybe selling lemonade again to support youth programs. The idea made him pause. Maybe the stand wasn't just a symbol of what he had lost. Maybe it could become a tool for something bigger. That night, he unfolded the table in the garage. His hands shook, but this time it wasn't fear, it was resolve. He set the picture on top, not to sell, not to profit, but to reclaim. To show that a boy could still be a boy, even when the world tried to make him something else. And as he stood there, looking at the familiar setup, he whispered something.